Morning folks, it's Chris here from Serene Education with the 4 majors analysis update for the 11th of October 2011. Hi guys, just going to go in 4 majors, starting with Euro against US dollar, working on our daily into our intraday time frames. Let's have a look at the daily to start with. Huge up candle yesterday, a lot of momentum. This coming while the US market as well as the Japanese market were away. A lot of strength, pretty much just building on the sentiment here, just building on the news that Sarkozy and Merkel were really were working together to try and sort out the issues in Euro, and this just grew and grew and grew. This momentum literally took us through a lot of areas where we thought we could see potential resistance. Myself in particular, I was looking at this candle over here being pretty much an exhaustion candle we saw previously. Primarily because, as you can see here, quite significant resistance along this trend line here, and we thought, well, we could very well see the same thing, trading to the upside, pretty much trading roughly around the same height on the wick side before we saw the US session bring it down. But with the US session not being around, momentum just grew throughout the day, and we finished the candle on a high, closing well above the 1600 level, 13600, which happened to be the previous support and resistance level not so long ago. And now we're sitting above that level, and we've seen little or no trading during the Japanese market. Very consolidative. So, will we see further extensions higher? There's talk that we've got the highs over here at 13700, which is also another price support and resistance level. And you saw price actually touch that area, and we actually started to fall back. This 13700 is a pivot point area, and a unique area at that, and we saw price taking note of it and falling back. So, see further extensions higher. Obviously we need to see 13700 being breached in the course of this morning, and then we're seeing the US market taking over this afternoon and pushing it higher. Possible targets along the way could be the other swing that we saw prior to the start here, roughly just under the 13900 mark. And then we start getting into the areas where 1400 is our long-term support and resistance level, and we can make it nice and dark. That is our ultimate goal. You notice the CTC is so well extended to the downside because we are still in this very negative trend. So this is very, very pleasing to see, but will we see this continuing during the course of this week? We have a lot of news out, primarily tomorrow in particular. We have some news on, if I could just pull it up here for you. Yes, we have the FOMC meeting minutes tomorrow night, GMT 7 o'clock, which is very, very important. So it remains to be seen what happens after that news. Today in particular, what do we have on Euro? We have the ECB President Tricky speaking this morning at 8:30 GMT, and not much else, but pretty much not else. He's going to be handing over the reins to his predecessor sometime soon, so it'll be interesting to see what he has to say regarding this latest move in particular, and what other measures they're going to be putting in place to really see the if we're going to see any further momentum to the upside. So, if anything, what we can do is look at potentially 13600 as a potential support area before we see another kick to the upside of 13700, or if we can maintain these levels over here, then see if we can see if 13700 can be breached this afternoon or this morning, and then support be found in this area before we see a further kick high. You look at the hourly, for example, CTC well extended to the upside. You can see the definite pullback during the end of day, and we saw the Asian session pretty much taking slightly higher, but not really making any attempt of those the highs that we saw at 13700, and we've seen the area here roughly around the 136,200 being tested quite a number of occasions on the hourly chart. So ideally, if we're going to see any further progressions, then this 136,200 needs to be in play or kept in check. So make that your intraday support if need be. If we break below that, then we could see 13600, as I mentioned, on a daily being potential target. So it's not too far off. But if we start seeing pullbacks, then we could see the fib extensions being tested along the way. If I just take the start of this trend, upside trend, you can see that we are playing with the 23.6% fib retracement area as we speak here, finding a lot of support along that area. Break below that, excuse me, 38.2% would be the next target, and then 50% back down to the 50% 50 period moving average. So let's see if the 23.6 actually holds up. Ideally, I'd like to see a break above 13,6500, the Asian high, to see any potential. Notice that we don't have a blue candle. We've got to wait for a blue candle. That's the only thing that's really missing on this particular time frame. But ideally, if we break above 13,6500, then we should see a further attempt at the high here at 13,700. Next up is sterling against US dollar. Good old cable. Here again, yesterday we saw some further upside movement. Pretty much seeing a bottom over here, hammer, a lot of supports through the latter part of the bottom here. You can see this green line over here is our daily pivot area, and price was able to pretty much punch higher. Notice the trading range yesterday compared to the European session one. Pretty much all that momentum yesterday on the euro is pretty driven up to the upside, primarily because of what Sarkozy and Merkel had to say on the European side. So very, very strong European. However, cable, sterling, pretty much testing a prior support and resistance level here on the pivot, daily pivot. You see that daily pivot was acting as a seeding level here, and we noticed we saw price actually punching higher and closing higher very significantly. However, over the Asian session, we have seen the price pull back. Are we going to see price now found support at this pivot level? This pivot level here being at the 1562.48 mark. So put that down, make a note of that area there. We need to see price actually finding support at that level, which happens to be the 20 period moving average. We have the first signal, the blue arrow of our 4-part CTC strategy template requirements. So we need to see a blue candle next, and then obviously the CTC on the other side to go blue. So that could still take a lot of time to materialize, primarily because we are still very much in a negative downside trend. So we're seeing consolidation against the major trend. There's still a lot of negative news out there. We are still seeing, so this upside movement is primarily news that we've seen recently of how the ECB and all these banks trying to get together to work out a plan to try and stem this negativity in the markets to make more money available, and we've seen some movement to the upside. A lot of consolidation here before price support, a very significant price support and resistance level here at 15,3500. That's a long term, which happens to be where the support area 3 pivot is sitting, so not too far off. So these pivots are very, very unique. If we find support at this area here, as I mentioned, above this pivot here, we can zoom in just around about the 1560 300 mark, then ultimately we're looking at the R1, which is about 1573 there again, R2 just below 15800, and R3 being here at 159,500, just below the 1600, which happens to be the 50 period moving average. So got to find support at these levels intraday. If that's the case, then we're looking great for further extensions higher. Then look at the hourly chart. Just wait for it just to come up. There we go. You can see the pivot, daily pivot being tested as we speak. Got to see price falling or closing higher than that. Nice bullish upside candle. Then we could start looking at the 157300 mark as our next potential target. Notice that these pivot areas are support and resistance levels in the past. Notice a significant bounce here at this level not too long ago. So that'll be your first target. Second target to the upside, as mentioned, here just below the 15800. We saw price support and resistance. Look at this correlation here, and then higher way to the upside. We saw the breakout initially. Moving on to Swissy, good old US dollar against the Swiss franc. Noticeable pullback yesterday against the trend, the upside trend. So you look at yesterday's negativity pushing price down, pretty much taking out all this previous work here, breaking below a prior support and resistance level here at 9100, and trading very in a consolidation range during the Asian session. Next potential target would be the S1. Likelihood if we see a break below the low of the candle yesterday's range, here just below the 8930 mark-ish. S2 would take us back to price support and resistance level here at 8850, taking us back to the institution moving average break below that would see the S3 here just above the 85.5 mark being retested. So pretty much playing tag at the moment now with the daily pivot area. Price support and resistance here pretty much being breached. Are we going to see a potential pullback before we see further extensions lower? It'll be interesting to see as we start seeing the countries within EU starting to vote for the EFSF meetings later this morning. It'll be interesting to see. They need all 17 Euro countries to actually agree with it. If one of those countries had to put a spanner in the spokes by saying no, it could really cause a major hoo-ha in it. So let's see how that pans out today. But as it stands now, we are trading below the daily pivots. If you can see consolidation below this, and we could see a potential extension lower on our smaller time frames. I'm just going to move to an hourly chart just to show you a setup with these pivots still on. I'll just wait for price just to refresh. There we go. So there's the daily pivots on an hourly chart. You can see pretty much trading well below that area here and consolidating through the Asian session. A lot of momentum to the downside yesterday, pretty much breaking through price support and resistance levels, pulling back and continuing to the downside. That particular breakout here, we saw the extension, a pullback. Oops, where did my... Bear with me for a moment while I try and find out where... There we go. So we saw 100% yesterday being reached. That was the initial start of the move, pullback, further extensions through the US session, and then 100% of that initial move being reached, and then we saw a hammer, a lot of slowdown consolidation in that, then we saw the Asian market pretty much trading sideways. We haven't seen this pair breaking the Asian high here just below the 905 mark, so they're pretty much a resistance level to start with at this level. Failure to see that being breached, we won't see any of the potential upside moves. If you look at a fib retracement area potential targets, 23.6 being breached, it's the 38.2 that's now in play. So we fail to see that area being breached at the 90.05 mark, then we won't see 50% and 61.8 being reattempted anytime soon. So if that remains to be the resistance level, look for potential for further downside movement to occur, and ultimately we look at the lows here, 900 being our first target because it was the low of this candle here, and then below that we can take into consideration all our pivot projection points. We have, in this case, broken through the daily pivots area, and next on our list, or our next target, would be S1 here, right down here at 93.50. Below that we could look at S2, which is roughly down near the 88.30 mark. So there's movement to be seen on this if we see further extensions lower. CTC is still in our favor. We have got a blue arrow. However, with all that momentum to the downside, CTC on most of the time frames is negative. 30 minutes bearish consolidative, 15-minute bearish consolidative, and 5 minutes. Seen a lot more blue through here, but it's only because we've seen the consolidation. So we see a breach of that consolidation to the downside. As I mentioned, 90.05 is our ceiling level at this time, at this level as we speak. So put that in so you can see quite significant resistance level through most parts of the last 6 hours or so, and we need to see a break below that. As I mentioned, if we're trading below the 900, then we are definitely going to be trading in clean air, and we should see price really falling rapidly. Until then, what we'd like to see at the moment now is the breach of this upside trend here. You can see low, bounce, 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 bounce higher on the 5 minutes. So we're going to see a squeeze pattern occurring here. It's trading above all the moving averages, but we still haven't traded above the most important one, this 90.50 mark, as I mentioned. Until it actually breaks higher than that with a lot of momentum behind it, then we're not going to see any further upside movement. We'll probably end up seeing a bearish engulfing, and then we could see potential further extensions to the downside for this pair. Last pair of the day is the US dollar Japanese yen. I've plotted all my pivot points. You can see because this trading range is quite narrow, our pivot points are very narrow because of that. Obviously, the more action you see, price volume, etc., those pivot points will obviously be a lot bigger. But you can see because this pair has been very It's been trading in a very consolidative range. Then our pivot points become very consolidated themselves. So you can see price is pretty much testing this the daily pivot area. A lot of indecision, spinning tops, dojis, Asian market trading. The Asian session last night, very, very indecisive. More happening at the bottom of the wick, trading below all the moving averages, and the CTC well extended in our favor. We do have two parts of the CTC strategy in our taking place, the blue arrow and blue candles. However, still trading below all the moving averages in a downside trend, bearishness over here. We can still see trend direction below. Ideally 7610, which happens to be the S3 here, is pretty much our target intraday, or for the foreseeable future. A lot of indecision, but we need to see a decision candle. A little bearish candle here today would be great, or during the course of this week a little bearish downside candle would definitely confirm that we're looking for further extensions. We've had a number of days of indecision. We need to see a decision candle. If that decision candle comes today, then ultimately 7610 would be our first target. If we look at an hourly chart of this pair, just wait for there we go. Just zoom in. So you can see the green line being the daily pivots, pretty much being tested quite frequently. Very, very small trading range, as I mentioned. It's so not worth trading this particular pair because it moves so bloody slowly, and we've seen so much action, but little return for value on this particular pair. You can see pretty much over the past number of hours, almost a full day in particular, just sitting there about a daily pivot. So we are seeing lower swings. You can see the highs are getting lower, and our lows here are pretty much supportive. Got to see a breach below the S1, I think, here at 76.52-ish to be seeing any further extensions lower. Otherwise, we're just trading in a tight range along the daily pivot area. So if we see a break to the upside, then we want to see a trade above 76.80 to see R2 and R3 being tested during the course of the week. If not, a break below pivots. If S1 in particular here at 76.52 would see S2 76.40 being breached, or next target, ultimately back down to 76.10 as our ultimate target. So this very consolidated at the moment. We need to see some sort of price action to give us that, and that has to come in the form of a nice bearish engulfing or bullish engulfing pattern. That's it, folks. Hope you have a fantastic trading day today. Just be aware that we are going to see some news tomorrow that's really going to be significant. There is some news today across the board for most pairs. Be aware of it, please. It's very, very important. We have ECB President Tricker speaking this morning at 8:30 GMT relating to the Euro matters, and that's pretty much what's on everybody's mind at the moment, so that could be quite significant. Then we go into this afternoon. Not much else. Nothing else out at the moment for the US markets. So Wednesday, tomorrow, is going to be quite important. We have Clement count change tomorrow for the sterling average earnings. Then we have industrial production month-on-month figures. They're expecting a very low figure for euro. That's at 10 a.m. GMT. But the most important one tomorrow is going to be that FOMC meeting minutes at 7 p.m. GMT tomorrow night. Those are going to be the most important ones. I think if we don't see any action, it's primarily because we're working our way up till that point. Very, very interesting. Got to work out those. Those meetings are pretty much what base, or what which are relevant to the interest rates. So make a note of it. Wait for that particular announcement, because it could actually give us a direction for things to come in the next couple of weeks or so. That's it, guys. Have a fantastic trading day. Keep it simple. If you're following the rules of the CTC, back it up with sound money management. Keep it simple. Cannot keep just mentioning that. You have to keep it simple. There's a lot of volatility. Don't trade Japanese yen. And look, this just scares you. But yeah, there is a lot of volatility out there. Please be aware of it. Factor it into your trading. Make sure you're aware of very strong support and resistance levels. And if you get those entry levels, just stick to your sound money management rules. And I wish you all the best in your trading. Till then, trade safely and trade serenely.